Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of The Summer I Turned Swiftie, where two USA Today bestselling authors rewatch The Summer I Turned Pretty through a Swiftie lens. I'm Catherine.
I'm Jessica.
I'm the Swiftie.
I'm the control group.
I wait every week for your new description of yourself. I love it. We drop on Wednesdays, just like the show, because of course we do. And like many, Jessica and I were transfixed, obsessed. What is the word we're going with this week? By the last season of The Summer I Turned Pretty and the global phenomenon that it became. The show is steeped in Taylor Swift songs, Easter eggs, and parallels to classic movies and TV shows. And, has like one of the greatest ships of all time. Anyway. And now that a movie has been announced, we're doing a once-a-week rewatch and discussing all of the above through the songs of Taylor Swift and other things, really. So before we get into episode 5, we wanted to follow up on a couple of things from the last episode, if you listened. We asked and you answered, thank you so much, was the unicorn, the glass unicorn, in Belly's room in season 1? And several of you told us that you can see part of it on her dresser, I believe in episode 2. So good to know it's there. Other people told us that it was there in season 2. And yes, we're going to come to that. We'll see it in season 2. We also got a really great song choice, viewer suggested song choice from 2 different viewers about last week, season 4. And it's Untouchable by Taylor Swift, which is like not one of my favorite songs of her, but the lyrics definitely fit. Untouchable, burning brighter than the sun. And when you're close, I feel like coming undone in the middle of the night when I'm in this dream. It's like a million little stars spelling out your name. You got to come on, say that we'll be together. Come on, little taste of heaven. It's half full and I won't wait here all day. I know you're saying that you'd be here anyway, but you're untouchable, burning brighter than the sun. And now that you're close, I feel like I'm coming undone. It's a good fit.
And I love hearing other people's choices. I'm so glad people are finally doing that.
Yeah, please keep them coming. Because
as the control group, I need you to introduce me to more of
to
these
even
songs.
More Taylor Swift?
Yes, exactly.
Did you watch the Ruin the Friendship edits that I sent you, Jessica?
Yes, I did. See, I feel validated.
No, 100%, 100%. Though I think what we were told, without spoiling, is that she doesn't want him like a best friend. Anyway, I did also Google the Daisy theory and to try and see if that is actually a theory. And I don't think it is. I think, if you think about it, she wore daisies on her first date with Camp, though she was trying to get Conrad's attention. She does wear them with Conrad, which we'll talk about later. And one thing that I saw with because we talked last week about the daisies on the table, and this sort of long, lingering shot on them, but it was Susanna who put them out. So maybe it's just something that Susanna and Belly share. There are lots of parallels over the seasons between Belly and Susanna, not in a Conrad's dating his mother kind of way, but in a kind of the way that they both love the summer house and some of the imagery around it. So maybe that's what it is. But if I'm wrong, if you have a Daisy theory, please let us know in the comments. We do not have a monopoly on theories about The Summer I Turned Pretty, at all. Okay, it says short episode recap, and Jessica told me afterwards that my recap was not short. So bear with me. I feel like a lot of stuff happened in this episode, which was called Summer Catch, which again, season 1, all the episodes start with summer. Remember my episode 5 theory. We're going to come back to this at the end of the episode. But basically, in a nutshell, like Taylor Swift's track 5s, I think they're the most heartbreaking, important, pivotal episodes of the season.
This was the episode that made me wonder why we are doing this to ourselves, because it's so sad.
I agree.
Once you've gone all the way through to the end, especially if you're watching this for the first time, we won't totally spoil it, but once you catch on to a lot of things, whether or not you've caught on to a lot of things that are going on, it's sad, but it's sadder. I think
I was really sad watching this episode, honestly. It was up there with there's a couple other episodes where I was and the first time I watched it, I was just probably annoyed, but I actually was sad. As we pointed out last week, this is a show we think about timing, and this episode is a perfect example of that because the timing is all off here, except for one little devil.
We could just rearrange some things. It wouldn't be sad at all.
Yeah, it wouldn't be sad, but it is the day after the 4th of July, which takes us to July 5th, which I think is important because we only have 2 episodes left in this season. So let's see if the timeline tracks. And look, this is Jeremiah's villain origin story, okay?
Well, not everyone thinks he's a villain, Catherine.
Okay, well, you're wrong. Anyway, basically, we saw him at the end of the last episode try and break up Belly and Conrad's first kiss, or successfully do so with a firework, because he was mad at Conrad for pushing their dad away. And he saw that he was happy about Belly, and he inserts himself. And that's what he continues to do in this episode. So our episode
Well, you say mad, I say jealous.
Okay, yeah, both work.
I'm going with jealous. Yeah.
Okay, mad and jealous, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's not about Belly, it's about Conrad.
Right.
Like many things are in this show.
Agreed.
It starts with our second flashback of the season of Conrad teaching Belly how to dance when she's, I think, 12 and he is 14. It's one of her favorite memories of summer. It started with a song and ended with a boy. He is playing chess with the boys and he's like, oh no, I can show you. And they have this very sweet scene that does come back at a pivotal moment in season 3. And her hands are sweaty and his hands are sweaty. And there's one of those slowdowns again where they're just looking at one another and smiling. And it's just nice to see. We cut to her at her deb practice. She's wearing a blue checked dress. We will come back to this later. And she texts Conrad, what should I text him? Blah, blah, blah. She texts him good morning and she goes back and forth on the emoji and she chooses the sun emoji, which again is an Easter egg for something that comes later. Anything celestial really has to do with them. And she still doesn't have an escort. Interestingly here, and this is why this summary is long, there are other
could we go with daylight theory?
Yeah, okay.
Sun emoji?
Yes. Potentially.
Okay.
This whole episode does take place in the daylight, right?
Yeah.
Except for one pivotal, terrible scene at the end. Yeah. We can see there are other texts, and this might just be a TV show problem, which often, you don't see a whole text history, but we see what might be Conrad's first text to her, which is like, where are you? We're all down at the beach. And she said, oh, sorry, I got distracted talking to my mom. And he's like, well, hurry up and get down here, which, So he was texting her that in front of Nicole on the beach the day before. Anywho, she's all happy. Back at the beach house, Conrad wakes up smiling and happy. And he goes to his window to see, I think, if Belly is in the pool. And then he takes his phone and he sees the text from Belly and he's just smiling. Meanwhile, back at the Deb ball, we hear an important exchange between Nicole and Belly where she talks about how Conrad stepped in last year, which actually is contradicting something that happened in the birthday episode. Because in the birthday episode, when he's trying to find out if Cam has been asked to the ball, he's like, the dance coach is a bear. But here, sounds like he never even went through the dance coaching. And Belly's like, oh, well, his mom knows a lot of dances. And then Nicole says that she was left on red last night. And has Belly seen him today? And she flashes back to the kiss. Back at the house, Conrad's looking for Belly. And what's so nice about this is we always see Belly like looking for Conrad, but now we've got that first flip. Right? So he goes into her room, he sees Juniorman, he boops him on the nose, he goes downstairs, and, this is where Jer notices that he's happy. Jer lies and says that he didn't see them out on the dock the night before, but asks, what they were up to, and he's like, oh, we were just talking, and he presses, and Conrad's like, don't you need to get to work? Jer knows obviously Jer knows something's going on. Laurel and Susanna do make up their terrible fight in this episode. And Laurel does confess that she slept with Cleveland in her car, which she also tells Belly about.
Well, they make up. They get way stoned.
They get way stoned, but boundaries, Laurel, boundaries. At the club, Jeremiah steps in to dance with Belly and just is attention-seeking behavior that really drives me nuts. But Conrad comes to the club too, and Jeremiah sees him there, and there's this whole exchange where he's waving at Belly, but Nicole thinks it's her, and then he wants Belly to know it was her, so he texts her and says, I'm hoping to see you when you get back. And then thus what my husband would call Three's Company plotline begins, because the obstacles start to keep these two away from each other all day long. He is out on a boat with Cleveland fishing. Belly gets taken on a date with Cam. She doesn't want to go on. And they do break up. Cam says that he knows the who, but I don't know. I'm going to ask you, Jessica, do you think he meant Jeremiah or Conrad? Because
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because he did ask her, does Jeremiah have a thing for you? Or do you have a thing for Jeremiah? And she said, you mean Conrad? And then he did on the 4th of July see her watching Conrad. So
yeah, all of the above. And he would be correct.
All of the above. And then he says something interesting. I hope he just treats you right. And why are people always warning Belly about Conrad? What has he done?
Well, if he was talking about Jer, I think it would almost make more sense.
Right? Yeah. Interesting. But I'm sure she heard that because she only thinks about Conrad, and she was thinking about Conrad, that she only thinks about that as a warning about Conrad, which again gets echoed at the beginning of season 2. There's more misconnections between Nicole and Conrad, and Jeremiah starts his little plot and tells Nicole that Conrad loves Frank Ocean. Zero chance that he loves, nothing wrong with Frank Ocean, but there's zero chance that Conrad loves Frank Ocean and wants to go to the Yarmouth Music Festival with Nicole. But he's like planting his little plot. And then I think a really important scene does happen on the boat between Cleveland and Conrad, because Cleveland picks up on the fact that Conrad is happy and asks him about it. And Conrad admits that it's about somebody else. And then we hear him for the first time talk about his feelings for Belly. He's still like couching what they are. He says, I always thought of her as a little kid, but now she's not. And he doesn't know. Like, he gets asked, would you like her? And he immediately says no, and then he sort of backs off because, like, obviously he does. Just, he has so much other stuff going on. If they started something, he's worried he would mess it up, which is, of course, the thesis of this season. And then Cleveland says something that I think, like, he didn't intend to have this much of an impact, but he says that he learned from years of overpriced therapy that you can't be good with someone unless you're good with yourself, thus putting Conrad up in his head, which only gets amplified when he comes home and he sees the aftermath of the moms and their high snackathon that happened. He flashes back to having to cover his mom with a sweater, the blanket on the couch, and he sees the portrait of Jeremiah, which is all screwed up, and he slaps it over, and then like right afterwards, Belly comes out all happy and like, hey. And
I think Conrad really misreads the situation.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you think he misreads the situation with the moms?
I think if he had been there and seen, how silly they were, even though he knows what's going on with his mom, I think if he'd been there and seen how silly they were, it would have hit a lot different. He walks in and I think he reads it as like, she is not well. Like, what is happening,
Right, and that does get reinforced at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But, in this conversation they have, and we'll talk probably more about it later. Let's talk about that conversation later in our favorite lines. But anyway, they have a conversation about the state of their relationship, which does not go the way really I think either one of them wanted. And then I think Conrad's worst fears are realized, because after his mom comes back from the bar where she is behaving kind of insanely, honestly. Like, I mean, she's behaving like someone who's dying, I think. It's just acting out and trying to recapture her youth and making out with a stranger in a bar.
He's trying to get her drinks paid for.
Yeah, exactly. And Jumper is there. Jumper is always at the scene of the crime. I don't know. It's funny. He finds her on the stairs, and he helps her up, and he's like, okay, let's not fall tonight. And like, he's really very caring and loving with his mom here. And then Belly goes for a night swim, and I think Belly thinks that Conrad's going to be there. She does her submerge thing. This is a thing that happens many times in the show. She swims at night. She submerges underwater. 50% of the time when she comes up, Conrad is there, and 50% of the time he's not. So this time, Jeremiah jumps in the pool underwater, and then Jeremiah tells her, I've been waiting for you, which I do not believe for 1 minute that he's waiting for her. He brings up Conrad. He brings up Cam. He, again, reinforces the fact that he knows that she wants to be with Conrad, and they kiss, and I mean, it gets pretty physical pretty quickly. Belly is a horny girl. And she, she's a teenager, like, whatever. And then we hear about Susanna told her when she was born that she knew that Belly was destined for one of her boys. She hoped it would be Conrad, but here she is kissing Jeremiah Fisher.
Wasn't that a short recap?
I tried. I'm sorry. I just think there's so many pivotal things that happen in this episode. Okay,
there are a lot.
So what was your favorite scene?
I actually like the scene where Laurel and Susanna get so stoned in the kitchen. I think it's funny.
Oh, in the kitchen, I think it's funny. I think it's just in the bar.
Kitchen,
in the bar,
right.
It's
later turns unfunny, but in the kitchen, it's very funny and charming. And I mean, the whole thing with her. As soon as Laurel says that to Belly about hooking up with Cleveland, Belly's like, oh, la la la, and Laurel's like, what did I say? Like, she immediately doesn't even know what she said. So I don't know. I think they're just both so, I love their friendship, and Laurel especially can be so uptight that our friend Laurel, it's nice to see her cut loose once in a while. And some of their lines were just great. Susanna, when she's painting Jer and she's like, this light is beautiful. Can you feel it? It's so soft. Can you feel the softness? And That's what I mean when I say Conrad misread. I think by the time he walks in, like, the playfulness and all of that is gone, and it just
Right.
looks like, he's not exactly sure what happened, but the painting is so disturbing, and I think he's thinking, I don't know what is going through his head, but certainly not, how it actually was. I wish he had been there during that scene. It would have played out I think everything would have played out so differently if he had been
I
home.
agree. It's interesting that how like pivotal that missed moment is because again, it's about timing, and especially I think because he comes back ringing those words from Cleveland are ringing in his ears, and then the party is literally over when he arrives. And what I thought was interesting in that scene is I think we saw this last episode too, but we see Conrad, responsible Conrad, coming back, right?
Mhm.
He's immediately starts cleaning up, and we see it even in the morning with Jeremiah, where he's like, "Please, like, clean up after yourself." And he says it to him again, like, "Are you going to put that, aren't you going to put your milk away?" Like he's being the dad, right? Which is, I think, a way that he was, and he kind of lost that in his couple of months of rebellion, and now reality is kicking in. I'm wondering with the painting because we don't know what kind of cancer that Susanna has.
Right.
We've never been told. And like, is it brain cancer? Is he worried that that painting is evidence of like,
Right. I think he's just like, "What? Are you losing your faculties? What's
yeah,
happening?" Where
yeah,
the
yeah,
actual explanation was so much more innocent. And Jer too in that scene, I was pretty mad at Jer by the time this scene rolled around. I mean, we've seen him actively undermine Conrad for the first time with his kind of scheming, but also um I think just, there was that jealousy, the obvious jealousy of Conrad, where some of his interest in Belly seemed to be coming from. But at the club, I felt like he was behaving very much like in more of a traditional kind of like player guy kind of way, where it seemed to me in those opening scenes, like at the snack bar and at the dance, his interest in Belly was coming from the fact that she was the only girl who was not fawning over him.
right.
Like, I'm gonna go for the disinterested girl is such a, she doesn't see me that way, and it's like that almost like that challenge where you're gonna try to conquer this thing was kinda how he was reading earlier, so I was already kinda, like, mad at him, but he looks so Midsummer Night's Dream beside the pool. I mean, he
Very
was
puckish for sure.
yes, very, very puckish, and, like, even in that scene, you're thinking like, "Oh gosh, I'm mad at him, but he is so adorable," and, like, I get the appeal, and then she just paints this absolutely ridiculous painting of him.
Yeah,
Wasn't,
yeah,
like,
he
some
is
nice
definitely
welcome.
sweet with his mom in that moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting when he's scheming with Nicole, he says, right, like, "Oh, maybe he's being a bit distant, but there's all this stuff going on with our dad," you know? So I think he's sort of is like he's told on himself again and made it more explicit that like for him
Yeah.
the whole issue is just Conrad and his dad and he's pissed about that. Yeah, it's
That's
a good
true.
scene. I mean, look, and even the scene at the bar, which I find just sad and a bit devastating, it is still them letting loose and kicking back and trying to be like they were when they were kids and then Laurel goes off and hooks up with Cleveland again, and I think Cleveland actually like wants something with Laurel, right? Like he says that to Conrad on the boat, and Conrad figures out who it is, and is like, "Yeah, text her," you know.
I
Which
loved Laurel's, like, I don't know, it's hard to play drunk in a way that comes across right and is kinda likable, drunk and high, and I loved her,
yeah,
like, Oliver twist. "Please, sir, we are mothers. We are homeowners."
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, Laurel and Conrad
Just
have a nice relationship we talked about before. Chris Briney actually always singles out his scenes with her as some of his favorite scenes to do. And they do have that sort of like, kind of like Cleveland is his surrogate dad, she's his surrogate mom, right? And they have that dynamic, but because it's not actually his mom, he can be a little removed from it and he can be open with her in a nice way. So I always feel like he's like his most mature when he's talking to her, which is interesting, given that he's in love with her daughter.
well, he also kinda rallies for her with Cleveland on the boat, right? Once
Yeah,
he
yeah, well,
figures
that's
out that's who Cleveland is talking about, he's like, "You should definitely text
yeah.
her,"
Yeah,
you know?
she's at home like gossiping with my mom and you should definitely be texting her. And he does. So, that's sweet.
What was your favorite scene?
Yeah, I mean, I I guess it's between 2. I think it's when he goes to see her at the club. And, he hates the country club, right? And we never find out why, but he clearly hates the country club. But yet he goes there anyway. to find Belly. And I think I think that little scene is nice, like, despite the fact that, of course, the other girl he's dating is also there. So it's a bit messy,
Yeah.
but he just, like, he wants her to know that he got her message, that he's there, that he's thinking about her, and the little waves. And then when he realizes that there's been a miscommunication, then he texts her, like, very intentionally, like, "No, no, I was here to see you. I'll see you when you get home." So I think that's sweet, but
I love
obviously to me
I love happy Conrad. Everyone
I know,
keeps
me too.
commenting on how happy he is, and there's a lot not to like about the club, and there's a lot going on in this season that we don't really, unless I have to think about it more, but I there's a lot about like class and race, and particularly with Steven's storyline,
Yes.
that's going on in this season that I feel like kind of disappears in season 2 and 3, revisited at least in an overt way compared to
Yeah,
season 1.
I think there's still some allusions later on to, like, where Steven's going to college and what's that's gonna cost and stuff like that, but I agree with you. There
Maybe
you
I'm
know
giving Conrad too much credit and projecting, but I kind of feel like he's just very not into that scene. Even how I think he's very aware of all these things, and even how he discourages Belly from doing the dub ball. I think it's just very, yeah.
Yeah.
He would fit the perfect demographic for it, but I think he's,
Yeah, but he's not that guy, right? He, like,
not that
on
guy.
paper seems like that guy, but he's not that guy in so many ways. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
we're not going into, like, Steven's whole storyline with Shayla, but yes, he's seen the other side. It was Adam who suggested to him about the poker room, and he makes money, and he's that becomes a whole sideline. But I think, probably my actual favorite scene is the scene between Belly and Conrad because despite how it's devastating, they are open with each other. They are being honest with each other again, particularly Conrad. Like he starts off with his usual wishy washy thing, which is where he gets his reputation as being someone who like gives love and takes it away. But she presses him and he says, okay, no, you're right. Like, obviously I think about you. I do. And you know that I do, which is again a theme of like, that I think about you. Like, let's not pretend. Same thing. He's echoing what he said the night before in the doc, right? Like, you don't know the effect you have on people. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you do. And so here again, he's reinforcing that message. Like, I've been pretty clear with my intentions, but I can't. Which is, I'm sure, horrible for Belly to hear. That being said, being like, I'm not waiting for you anymore is such a 16-year-old girl thing to say. Like, haven't you waited for him your whole life? You can't wait like a couple more days for him to figure his stuff out. She really like, I don't know how to take her with him in the sense of like, she's so quick to believe that he doesn't have feelings for her. And that's such a theme in this show, right? So like she sees it. I mean, they almost kiss. She breaks up with her boyfriend. She's like looking for him. He's looking for her. Instead of saying like, what happened today? Like instead of going that one step further and being like, well, what about our texts? Like, like, you came to see me this morning. Like, what's going on? She just accepts and in defeat and is like, what happened to the boy I knew I fell in love with when I was 10 and storms off. But of course, that is something that comes back. That thought process about him when he was 10 comes back later on. So, yeah, I think it was important. I mean, I think for the story, we need it to keep the sort of tension of the story arc going on. And that's the problem with stories like this of people who are meant to be but can't be together. There has to be obstacles, right? And so, this is the obstacle that we're faced with in this episode. But then we're faced with like an even bigger obstacle in the form of his brother, which doesn't really happen in the books. Jeremiah makes a move and Belly doesn't reciprocate in the books in
Yeah.
book 1. So interesting.
I think that line you mentioned earlier that Cleveland says to Conrad on the book, I called it out as a storyteller. I love these little lines of dialogue or narrative or whatever that end up being so thematic to the whole show. So when Cleveland says, yeah, if there's one thing I've learned from years of overpriced therapy, it's that you can't be good with someone else until you're good with yourself. Seems like such a like throwaway thing to say, but I think Conrad takes it to heart. And I think as soon as he gets back to the house and he's kind of misreading maybe a little bit the gravity of what has transpired while he was gone, And like you said, I think he gets very in his own head. And I don't think Cleveland was trying to give him like advice to move away from this girl situation at all. But I think he's realizing how much he is not good with himself in that moment and how serious this thing with his mom is going to be. And he's being protective of his own feelings, but also of Belly. And it's just so much misreading going on. But I loved that line. And I think Conrad will also need to learn it in overpriced therapy in season 3. It's not enough to just have Cleveland give him the shortcut
Yes.
on the boat.
Yes. I mean, everyone needs to be in therapy in the show. Is that your favorite line in the episode?
That was my favorite line. I think it was a clever and cleverly timed line as well.
Well, for once, the last line of an episode is not my favorite line. I'm breaking my streak.
Yeah, not with how this episode ended. I don't think you're going to.
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I go back and forth between the first line of the episode, which is like my favorite memory or one of my favorite memories, started with a song and ended with a boy. I think that also is thematic of the show, is the song Lover, like maybe. But I still think I think about you, I do, and I do. It's so succinct. Like as a writer, like it's 3 very short sentences and it just sums up everything and it's echoing a conversation they had in the past, but it's also echoing a conversation they're going to have in the future. So I think it's just really, that's about it. And then but I can't. Not even why I can't or I can't right now, just I can't, So
yeah. Well, he feels like he cannot tell her why he can't. He feels like 100%. He can't tell anybody.
Yeah. I think that's right. Okay, Easter eggs. You found some.
Well, I've noticed very muchly that she broke up with Cam at the ocean.
Right.
Which we've talked about, the theory that the ocean kind of symbolizes Conrad, and they really are having this kind of perfect little date. If she was into him, he brings her avocado sandwiches, and they spot whales in the water with their.
Is this a perfect date for Jessica, or because Belly has demonstrated zero interest in whales?
I think once you're a working mom in your 40s, if someone brings you a sandwich, that's amazing. The bar is low, Catherine, but. They're having this really cute little picnic and whales are jumping out of the water and it's so idyllic. And she's like, how have I never seen this spot before? And I think it's almost too perfect. Like everything about it is perfect except for him.
Right.
But I also think if we're going with the theory, if we're buying into the theory that the ocean also symbolizes Conrad, I mean, that is a very ocean moment. They're literally sitting in it on these rocks.
Yeah.
So
no, good point.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the other one is just the way she's dressed, right? So she wore a red checked dress the last episode, and we were questioning on color theory if that was, because it was the 4th of July. But now she's wearing a blue checked dress that is almost the same as the red checked.
Yeah, and she's also wearing it when she breaks up with Cam. So like she's at the ocean, but she's wearing blue, which would be Jer, but then actually that is kind of how it plays. And if Jer is the pool, there is this interesting camera angle where they're kind of circling each other, more like a circle in the water.
As opposed to infinity. Good catch. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, their arms are kind of out, like, it makes a point of showing them from a...
I fast-forwarded through that. I just can't. I know what happens, No, but I mean, if we come to that scene and we talk about the pool versus the ocean. So for those of you who don't know, the theory is that Jeremiah is the pool, he's shallow, he's contained, and Conrad is the ocean, he's infinite, he's untamable. There's a lot of that symbolism through the show for sure, except for, with a few exceptions, all the important things that happen between Belly and Conrad happen on the beach, particularly later in their relationship, and Jeremiah and Belly, it's in the pool. And here we are in the pool, and Jeremiah dives right in and interrupts her swim. I mean, if you want to talk about the difference between the brothers, Conrad always, when he talks to Belly at the pool, sits at the end and waits for her to notice that he's there, But Jeremiah interrupts, like literally dives underwater and interrupts her.
In every way. I mean, there's a lot of just, these are teenage characters and they're really immature in how they're reacting in this scene, but also just no. There's so a lot of the stuff that like in season 3, people are like, look, brothers, this should be off limits, like,
yeah,
it kind of all goes back to this moment. It honestly, Belly has been fantasizing about Conrad all day. Like What are
Yes.
you doing? And maybe even if you could see him, like maybe just think about it. This family is so important to you. Think about it for longer than 30 seconds, maybe. And Jer, no.
Yeah, I know it's
Those are
interesting.
my
Like,
thoughts on the whole scene are just
yeah, well, and
no.
I'm analyzing like the pilot episode, and the scenes that I looked at today actually are a conversation that gets cut down between Susanna and Laurel, where Susanna says, like, oh, that Belly is like meant for one of my boys. And she starts off by saying, oh, did you see Jeremiah trying to get Belly's attention at dinner? And Laurel's like, no, that's just Jer being Jer. And then she says the line like, oh no, but she's meant for one of my boys. And Laurel says like, I hope not. That would be so messy or something like that. Like, like, what a disaster that would be. Foreshadowing, obviously. Like, what do you think Belly is thinking in this moment? Like, she's just like, can't have Conrad, so guess I'll have Jeremiah? Like, what? Is it just being wanted? Like, is it because she got rejected and now here's someone like expressing want for her?
I mean, it would be so much easier if it were Jer in that moment, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think she is like, you've been looking very Midsummer Night's Dream all day. And everybody else at the club is falling all over this guy. And
right.
He's suddenly interested in me. And I love them both. And,
but I think it's a bit more everybody else wants him. And now he wants me. And like, because if we go back to the thesis at the beginning of the summer, like nobody ever paid me any attention. I'm not the girl. People are only talking to me because they want to get to Taylor, right? Like that's what she thinks about herself at the beginning of the summer. And then here she is almost getting together with Conrad, and then he's rejecting her. And then immediately after that rejection, there's somebody else that everybody wants is in front of her being like, yeah, I've been waiting for you. Like she's been waiting for Conrad. Like that is why I find it so manipulative, because he knows that she's been waiting for Conrad. He acknowledges it in this conversation. He saw his brother almost kiss her the night before. He saw how happy he was that morning, and he knows why.
He clocked Conrad's good mood. He's been clocking Belly watching Conrad for years.
He saw Conrad go to see Belly at the club. Like, he knows.
Right. Yeah, when you were saying what was Conrad doing at the club, like, I think he was for sure just looking to lay eyes on Belly if he had some other
100%.
excuse, maybe. Yeah.
And Conrad knows his brother, Jeremiah knows his brother. So Jeremiah knows that. He knows that Conrad wants to be with Belly, and he is not only using that information and his other information to like keep that from happening, but he's literally using like his knowledge of Belly against her, which is she's a yearner. So if I pretend to be a yearner too, because he's not a yearner, okay, he's just not.
Right. This whole I've been waiting for you narrative.
Liar. I just don't believe it.
I mean, I'm not saying he does not genuinely think that he wants her in that moment, but I do not think that narrative is true. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because, again, with the timeline, I think there's a problem. We'll see in the next episode or in a couple of episodes where when Steven finds out that Jeremiah and Belly were kissing and he's like, wait, like, what about everyone else? And Jeremiah's like, oh, there hasn't been anyone else this summer. And he's like, you were just kissing a guy at a thing. And in fact, that was last week. Like, we are July 5th and Jeremiah was making out with Blake at that party like 8 days before. So.
And when he talks to her about having broken up with Cam, he's like, well, for the record, I liked him. And he seems sincere. I think he was he was teasing her about Cam.
Right.
But I thought he was pretty unbothered by Cam. It's Conrad who he's bothered by. Conrad was bothered by Cam. Conrad is the one who was legitimately jealous of 100%. Cam. And I think Jer is really only jealous of Belly's attention toward Conrad.
I maintain that his behavior all through this and even into season 2 is 100% driven by his need to like get one over on Conrad, win at something. He sees Belly as an object to be won. And it doesn't mean he doesn't have feelings for her, but it's like the prism of those feelings is just completely warped.
But she didn't need to make it so easy on him. I mean, he doesn't even have to try at all. She's just like,
Agreed. She's like, okay, let's make out.
Oh, cool. Like, not like, let's have a shy little first kiss. Like, let's make out.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Like, let's really make out. But
I feel like Belly made a really good decision with Cam.
Yes.
At the ocean, she recognized this does not feel right. Things are not aligning. She made like a mature, I don't know what's going to happen with Conrad, but this is, not right. And then she made a bad decision. So maybe pool, bad decision. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe she makes good decisions at the ocean and bad decisions in the pool.
No, she doesn't make good decisions anywhere, really. But she made one in this episode.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I think she's just so hurt by Conrad in that moment, But had they run into each other earlier that day, would have been totally different.
If he had gotten there a little earlier at the dance rehearsal and stepped in and danced with her.
Totally different day.
Different day, different show.
Day. Yeah.
Different show.
But Jer, opportunistic.
It's not just opportunistic. He created the opportunity and then he dove right in.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively. Look, we are not Jeremiah stans on this podcast. But if you want to defend Jeremiah's behavior, please let us know in the comments. Okay, daylight theory, we mentioned this before. The whole episode is in the daytime for once, except for that final scene in the pool. But I don't know. I still don't think.
And she texted him the sun. We said that earlier.
Yes, she texted him the sun. Exactly. But that is more like a celestial theory because I think the sun, the moon, the stars, anything celestial really has to do with Conrad.
Yes.
So I don't know. Mirroring, we did get scenes that like echo other scenes that are to come for sure. Belly swimming at night. I actually like how they do switch that up because you just kind of like never know when she goes underwater what's going to be waiting for her when she comes up, which is very well done. We've seen one instance of it in episode 1 where she comes up and Conrad's waiting for her and they have that kind of iconic exchange. Here's the second instance. So I like that they do that. Like we just don't know what's going to happen. So I think that's cool, but this is making me nervous for the season 2 rewatch. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I'll be okay. We'll be good.
Can we skip it?
Can we just watch the flashbacks?
Skip to 3.
No, we can't, but it's okay. We'll be okay. It's important. There's important things that happen. And I think as I've said to you before,
no, I'm not even this one was tough. Yeah,
this one was tough.
I think,
the next episode will be.
I think the situation with Jer becomes a lot more complicated, and there are a lot more arguments to be made for all the ways it becomes more complicated, maybe in season 2. But in this scene, even if you do end up being Team Jer, I do not think this was not the way to go about it. Jer and Belly.
No. Okay, let's get to the Taylor Swift of it all. This is an episode without Taylor songs because, of course, Belly is not feeling it with Conrad right now, or she's stuffing her emotions down.
Well, she is for like half of it, but I know.
But she's stuffing her emotions down, I think. And, I mean, Beck's Lost Cause plays.
Ugh.
I know. Maybe some of you are like too young for this to have stabbed you in the heart the way it stabbed us in the heart. But
that is a very episode 5 song to be playing.
Oh my God. Or something's in the air right now. Like
if we're going with the track 5.
Yeah. Like I don't really care right now, but maybe that's fine. You weren't even there that day. I was waiting on you. I wonder if you were aware that day was the last straw for me, and I knew. So what a great song.
I would have, had I had the unlimited budget. I do think Conrad was on her mind when she woke up most of the day. There's this innocent, like, she's on his mind too, and it's all to, and had I been able to pick a Taylor song, I think You Belong With Me would have been the perfect thing to be playing, like during those scenes where she's like trying to figure out what to text him and he's looking out the window and
interesting,
just so innocent. And so, like, sweet. Are you really going to finally look at me that way? I think it might be happening, And then instead you get back
like a bomb.
Oh! But that would have been
so high school. So, okay.
Maybe that's a basic choice, but I just feel like...
It's a good choice. It's a good choice. I think I thought of a Taylor song, like, for the same moment that they put in... Because I feel like Taylor is used at like emotional peaks in the show. So obviously Lover the first time she sees Conrad, and then False God the first time they almost kiss. So like I was trying to think of, at this very emotional moment, what would replace the Beck song from Taylor's catalog? There's a couple of options. I sort of went back and forth, but I picked Better Man, which is also Red from the Vault. I'm determined to make you listen to all the Vault songs on Red because I just think the lyric is so apropos. I know I'm probably better off all alone than needing a man who could change his mind at any given minute. And it was always on your terms. I waited on every careless word, hoping they might turn sweet again like it was in the beginning.
Oof.
Oof. Yeah. It's not even my
Yeah.
favorite song from the Vault or her discography, but I just think the lyrics are like, this is what Belly is feeling. And I think this is also what the show is telling us about Conrad, because I want to introduce just a little thought that we're going to pick up on, which is that I think there's a narrative about Conrad that in particular Belly and Jeremiah construct together that is not Conrad. So it sort of ties back to that, like, I hope he'll treat you right if he was speaking about Conrad. And it's one that definitely comes up in season 2 and in season 3. But I think people talk about Belly being an unreliable narrator and whether she is or not, and we can have that debate. But I think there is like a narrative about Conrad that doesn't always line up with actually how he's behaving. Yes, he is sending mixed signals here. Definitely.
But I think, and yeah, I could see how from the outside you might think this is toxic and he can't make up his mind and he's playing with her. But when you actually know what's going on with him, it's so sad.
It is, but
There's
even
so much
if,
more to it.
like, but he never says anything toxic to her, right? Like, if you think about that conversation, when he's trying to deny anything, how he's like, oh, I was drunk, I don't remember. He told her like 2 weeks ago he always remembers everything when he's drunk, right? Yeah. So even when he's trying to
people say that. People say that, and it's not true.
I know, but he specifically told her, I remember everything that happens when I'm drunk. And he knows he told her that. It wasn't that long ago. They remember everything. So even when he's like obfuscating, he is telling her, I don't really mean that. Like, I can't, but that's not what I mean. And then he just drops the pretense pretty quickly and is honest with her. As he himself says in season 3, there's only one time in the whole show where he isn't honest with her, which we'll get to in season 2. And the rest of the time, he's like, it might be hard for her to hear. And maybe he's not explaining like why he's feeling the way he's feeling. But I think he's like actually pretty emotionally mature and very open with her about where he is at in respect of her. But this gets turned into this like, oh, he's there, he's not, he gives his love, he takes it away. I don't see it. I don't. I think the person playing games is Jeremiah, not Conrad.
I mean, he hasn't given it or taken it away yet, right? He's there's on the edge of it. He's just hovering on the edge of it, kind of like he's being wishy-washy, but he's not technically giving or taking anything away.
Agreed.
So she, in your mind, she goes up to her room, and instead of calling Taylor, just Better Man is playing.
Yeah. And then
now
maybe she calls Taylor. It's a good conversation with Taylor.
I'm picturing you like physically taking these songs out of the vault. Like every week you're like spinning the dial.
I'm going into the vault and finding.
You're like Scrooge McDuck in your basement bank, getting ready to unleash
there
the
you
pain.
go. I like sure. We'll go with that. No, I think the conversation with Taylor is good and important, though we don't know what Taylor said to her.
Well,
Taylor's not Conrad's biggest fan.
It did remind me, that reminded me of, it validated a little bit what eventually will end up being Taylor's stance on Conrad. But
yeah. No, but again, obviously, like, you're 16 and your best friend calls you crying and is like, I thought something was going to happen. And then he told me he can't. And you're going to be like, fuck that guy, right? Like, that is, of course, what you're going to do as your 16-year-old best friend. You're not going to be like, well, what else is going on with him? He seems to be acting different. There must be something else. It can't be, obviously, no. Like, yeah. Okay. So does the episode 5 theory work?
I mean, it was painful.
No, but it was like
in an emotionally fraught.
Right. But I think was it the most emotionally impactful episode of the show? And does it play a role on the show that is like, without this, we don't have what comes afterwards? And I think yes, because we've had major developments with every single storyline here. Belly chooses Jeremiah after her rejection. There's advancement in the Laurel and Cleveland storyline. Stephen and Shayla's storyline advances. We get the introduction of Stephen maybe having a gambling problem. We haven't been talking about. Susanna is dealing with like the finality of her life, I think, in the choices that she's making. Is she really going to step away from her marriage? Like, what would that feel like? I think that's what she's testing out here with that guy who was hot. I mean, that guy was hot. But I couldn't be like, go Susanna, just because it just was so driven by like, all the dark stuff that's happening in the show. And then Conrad, too, I think has come back to himself. As I mentioned before, I think he's being the responsible one. He's cleaning up. He's helping his mom. He's trying to be lighthearted for her. Like, oh, big day, mom, like as you're passed out on the stairs. Like, imagine how upsetting that is to see, even if you didn't know that your mom had cancer for the second time. Like, if you come home and your mom is like, it'd be a pretty aggressive thing to see for a 17-year-old, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think in his mind, I mean, he doesn't know anything. That's how, in his mind, there's no fun, like I said, with him not being by the pool
Right.
earlier. There's no like fun, frivolous. He doesn't even know for sure what is going on.
Right.
He doesn't know that any substances were introduced here. He, in his mind, could just be like, she feels very sick today. Like not that she was dancing and having fun and,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he missed all the fun stuff.
Okay. It was a rough one. We do have some better stuff coming in episode 6. I think it's a easier watch for the most
as
part.
far as like the most, so is this track 5, episode 5 theory? That means like the most emotional of the entire season. Because I mean, 7 also is going to be emotional, right? But
it is, but I think in a different way. I think
in
it's
a different way. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the saddest, most difficult or most revealing, I think, of the episodes.
Well, 5 is really going to be the one that everyone's looking back at. And coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Could have all gone down differently.
Yeah. But then we wouldn't have a show. Like, literally, we wouldn't have a show. So
yeah, can't be
the
that
couple
easy.
can't get together in episode 5 of season 1. That's just not how it works. Nope.
Sorry, guys. Yeah.
All right. Well, that has been our episode. Thank you for joining us. As always, we appreciate your comments. We read them. We respond to them. We are the help desk for the Summer I Turned Pretty. If there are specific moments you want us to cover in episode 6 and others, we've been getting messages about others. We will cover those moments when we get to those episodes. And tell us, what Taylor Swift song would you have used and at what moment in the show?
Can't wait to hear them.
Can't wait to hear them. And we'll see you next week.